This is Shavkat Rakhmonov, a fighter from Kazakhstan who once made a huge splash in the UFC. He ran through everyone in his way, finishing opponents with both submissions and knockouts. Experts predicted he'd be a future champion. Fans compared him to Khamzat Chimaev, and commentators couldn't stop raving about him. It seemed obvious. This guy had a massive future ahead.
That man gives me chills.
But nobody expected what happened next. From being a highlight reel machine and one of the most talked about prospects, he suddenly became a forgotten name. Shavkat's last fight was 10 months ago, a razor-thin decision win over Ian Gary. The unstoppable aura that once surrounded him, gone. His name has slowly faded from the headlines. But here's what almost nobody knows. Behind the silence lies a brutal reality. Few people truly understand what Shavkat had to overcome and the hidden obstacles that stood between him and UFC gold. I had to dig deep, tracing his life, dissecting his career, and connecting the dots in a timeline that reveals the shocking truth. And what I found is nothing short of unbelievable. Political power games where the nomad was just a pawn, shady business deals that changed the course of his career, and even a heartbreaking personal tragedy. This is the untold story of Shavkat Rakhmonov's downfall. To understand the full story, we need to look back at Shavkat Rakhmonov's biography. He was born in 1994 in southern Uzbekistan, during a period of severe economic hardship for the local population. His parents divorced early, his father was absent from the family, and his mother had to work tirelessly just to provide for her children. Although Shavkat and his family are ethnically Kazakh, at that time they were living in Uzbekistan. From a young age, Shavkat was both a troublemaker and a fighter. He often said he was raised by the streets, where constant fights meant you always had to prove yourself. In Uzbekistan, he practiced wrestling and developed a strong passion for martial arts. At 16, he moved with his family to his ancestral homeland, Kazakhstan, but life there turned out to be even tougher. Shavkat and his siblings shared a cramped one-room apartment. He failed to get into university or find a stable job. Adapting was difficult, especially since he didn't even speak Kazakh. From childhood, Shavkat had loved combat sports and refused to give up on his passion. In Kazakhstan, he seriously dedicated himself to sambo and boxing, but instead of just training and preparing for fights, he had to work at the local market as a porter, earning only around $10 a day. Work started early in the morning and ended only at 5 p.m. And right after finishing his shift, the nomad would drag himself to the gym, exhausted but still determined. While living in Karaganda, Shavkat one day met Bayan Jangalov, who at the time was the coach of Kazakhstan's amateur MMA team. He immediately saw the young fighter's talent, brought him into his gym, secured him a salary, and began training him personally. This would eventually lead Shavkat Rakhmonov to become the youngest amateur MMA world champion from Kazakhstan. And later, he began his rise in the professional arena. Years later, his coach recalled that Shavkat was his most hardworking student and revealed that the young fighter's main motivation was to escape poverty and support his family. Rakhmonov alternated between fighting in Kazakhstan's promotion, Kazakhstan Mixed Martial Arts Federation, and Russia's M1 Global. In both organizations, he captured championship belts and defended them once. An interesting detail, in Shavkat's corner once stood Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, the legendary father of Khabib. There's even archive footage of Khabib himself visiting Shavkat's gym, holding a seminar, and helping him sharpen his striking. Between 2014 and 2019, Shavkat put together an incredible streak of 12 consecutive finishes. That dominance caught the attention of UFC matchmakers, earning him a contract and making him the very first fighter from Kazakhstan to sign with the UFC. In the UFC, Shavkat made a striking entrance with dominant finishes, choking out Alex Oliveira and Michel Prazeres before brutally knocking out Carlson Harris. On June 25, 2022, he defeated the seasoned Neil Magny, breaking into the welterweight elite. At that point, everyone predicted he would become a future champion and considered him one of the most well-rounded fighters in the promotion. Commentators and analysts frequently mentioned his name. His traditional Kazakh headwear went viral online, and UFC matchmakers were preparing to pit him against top contenders. Next, Shavkat faced a tough challenge in Jeff Neal, whom he submitted in the final round. Neal had missed weight for the fight, giving him a notable advantage. After that, Shavkat defeated veteran Stephen Thompson in a rather uneventful bout, stepping into the cage with a serious ankle ligament injury. Even with that unimpressive win, Shavkat was riding an incredible 6-fight finishing streak. All of this earned him a title shot against then-champion Belal Muhammad. On December 8, 2024, Shavkat was scheduled to fight Belal Muhammad for the UFC welterweight title. Everyone expected the Nomad to become the new champion. Everything was building toward that moment. But shortly before the fight, it was revealed that Belal had suffered a serious injury and the bout was canceled. Instead of waiting for the champion's return, Shavkat chose to face Ian Gary, who stepped in on short notice. This fight turned out to be the toughest of Shavkat's career. He struggled to find any openings against the Irishman's defense. At the end of the fight, Ian nearly locked in a submission and almost finished the Kazakh fighter. Yet Shavkat displayed solid defense and ultimately secured an unanimous decision victory. Shortly after, UFC commentator Daniel Cormier revealed that Rakhmonov had stepped into the cage with a torn MCL in his knee, the reason he couldn't perform at his full potential. But what shocked many of Shavkat's fans wasn't just the injury or the tough competitive fight, it was something else that, at first, seemed like a small detail. Take a look at this photo. At first glance, nothing seems unusual. Shavkat standing with his team after the Ian Gary fight. But there's an important nuance. In that fight, Shavkat's corner didn't include his American coach Henry Hooft, the legendary trainer behind fighters like Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, Michael Chandler, and Anthony Johnson. Hooft was with the team, but he wasn't allowed into the Octagon to corner Shavkat during the fight. He could only provide guidance from outside the cage. Instead, the person in Shavkat's corner was another influential figure, his main sponsor, Alidar Utamuratov. Alidar accompanies Shavkat everywhere. His net worth exceeds $100 million, and his father, Bulat Utamuratov, is officially a billionaire. Over the years, his father held positions such as presidential advisor, presidential aide, and even secretary of the Security Council of Kazakhstan. It's clear how they built their fortune. For context, Alidar also owns the gym in Kazakhstan where Shavkat trains. This revelation drove Kazakh fans wild. They were outraged that Shavkat was taking his sponsors into the corner, people who couldn't actually help him during a fight, while other fighters had professional coaches supporting them. But this situation only revealed the bigger story Shavkat Rakhmonov had gotten himself into. It all began after Shavkat's UFC debut, when the entire country started talking about him. His name was everywhere in the headlines, and he was celebrated and idolized. Every step he took toward the title seemed to create its own kind of cult. Shavkat quickly became a local star and a national hero. In a short time, he was one of Kazakhstan's most popular athletes. So what did all this lead to? Big Kazakh brands started taking notice. He was constantly receiving sponsorship offers. As a result, he began promoting numerous businesses. As his fame grew, so did the number of ads on his Instagram. Everyone understood one thing: Shavkat had become a national star and a fan favorite. On March 27th, 2023, the president of Kazakhstan even invited Shavkat to his residence for a personal meeting, wished him success, and told him he was following his fights. In countries like Kazakhstan, athletes and public figures often become tools of politics. Famous athletes are often used as promoters and propagandists, with their image boosting the authority of political leaders or ruling parties. That's why the president needed that meeting with the fighter, to raise his own ratings and show he was one of the people. In return, athletes received government support, wide recognition, and doors opened everywhere. That meeting only cemented Shavkat's status further. From that day, he became a megastar. Shavkat champion! Shavkat champion! Shavkat champion! Shavkat champion! Just take a look at his Instagram account. It tells the whole story. Shavkat signed contracts and became a brand ambassador for some of the region's biggest companies. Among them, the same energy drink brand promoted by Khabib Nurmagomedov, the country's largest bank, a sports apparel company, a construction firm, a Chinese car brand, a chocolate brand, and many more. Billboards with his face hang all over the country. Very quickly, Shavkat went from being just an athlete to becoming a commercial product. Every major brand was ready to throw money at him to be their face. By that point, money was probably pouring in for Shavkat. Interestingly, Shavkat's manager, Shavkat Rakhmonov, predicted this situation on a podcast when he said, "It's still too early for Shavkat to rest on his laurels. The goal is clear: winning the UFC belt. And that's why there's a concern. All this hype, all the praise, it affects anyone. We just don't want it to get to him in a negative way." And that's exactly what happened. Fame and nationwide recognition completely overwhelmed Shavkat. He became one of the most popular and respected figures in Kazakhstan. That's why having a multimillionaire in his corner made sense. By that time, Shavkat had long since become a commercial brand, attracting powerful people and their money. His sports ambitions may very well have taken a backseat. To understand the scale of Kazakh fan obsession, just listen to former UFC champion Henry Cejudo, who recently visited Kazakhstan for an exhibition fight.
It's ironic, bro. Like, I've been to Russia, Iran. I have never seen more fanatic fans than the Kazakhstani people, bro. Kazakhstan people are really, truly number one.
So, massive money, fame, and close ties to the country's leadership likely pushed his fighting career aside. As his coach once said, Shavkat's main motivation was to escape poverty and help his family, a goal he had long since achieved. That might explain the frequent injuries, the rare appearances in the cage, and perhaps the lack of focus. From a dedicated gym rat, Shavkat had turned into a media figure, constantly seen in photos and videos. Not long ago, in an interview, Shavkat was asked a tough question that he struggled to answer. "Shavkat, people want to know, do you still feel hungry for the sport? Hungry for victories in the Octagon?" I would say, do you still have the hunger for victories? Of course I do. How can I put this? People usually ask this question because they don't really understand. If I didn't have that hunger, I probably would have quit the sport already. His long pause and vague answer seemed to show once again that Shavkat had already gotten what mattered most: money and security for himself and his family. That was what he had been chasing all along. Perhaps now, his hunger was satisfied, and his latest Instagram post seemed to confirm it. He recently bought a brand new G-Wagon and proudly showed it off online. But to be fair, Shavkat isn't the first victim of this system. Before him, another famous Kazakh fighter, Gennady Golovkin, went through something similar. The whole country adored him. Every one of his fights was watched nationwide, his merchandise sold out instantly, and even the former president showered him with respect. But Golovkin managed to escape that insane hype. He moved to Los Angeles, where he trained and lived with his family. That allowed him to fully focus on his career. Now that he's retired, he has returned to Kazakhstan. He currently serves as president of the National Olympic Committee of Kazakhstan, a government position that helps boost the ratings of the president and the ruling party. As for Shavkat, at some point, the world saw that he was finally ready to return to the Octagon and claim the belt. In the summer of 2025, Shavkat started talking to the press more and demanding a title shot. By then, he had healed all his injuries, regained his old mindset, and was hungry for the belt again. His manager also stepped up, saying Shavkat deserved the next title fight. On July 27th, at UFC Fight Night in Abu Dhabi, Shavkat was in the corner supporting his teammate and fellow Kazakh, Asu Almabayev. After Asu's win, he told reporters that Shavkat was fired up and ready to fight as soon as possible. Shavkat looked confident and in great spirits. Everything seemed set for the Nomad's triumphant return to the Octagon. But fate had other plans. While Shavkat was in Abu Dhabi enjoying the event, a terrible tragedy hit his family. Media outlets reported that his wife had been involved in a serious car accident that left 2 people dead. On the morning of July 27th, she was driving her Toyota Land Cruiser on the highway when she lost control, causing the car to flip several times. Inside the vehicle were Shavkat's wife, their child, and 2 of her friends. Tragically, Both friends died from their injuries. Shavkat's wife and child were taken to the hospital's trauma unit with suspected head injuries. Their condition was reported as moderate. Under Kazakh law, a car accident like this could carry a 5 to 10-year prison sentence for the driver if found responsible for causing deaths through negligence. For Shavkat's wife, the situation looked terrifying. You can only imagine what Shavkat and his family were going through at that moment. Soon after, new information came out. Although the car was registered in Shavkat's wife's name, it was reportedly her late friend who had been driving. The situation with Shavkat's wife remains uncertain. She is currently listed only as a witness in the case. It's unclear whether this status will change and lead to charges or punishment, or if the case might be quietly resolved thanks to Shavkat's fame and powerful connections. For now, the outcome remains unknown. But one thing is clear. Shavkat has lived a roller coaster of a life. He went from growing up in poverty and hunger to rising quickly in the sports world, to tasting the luxuries of success, and finally facing the heartbreak of tragedy. We can only hope that this streak of setbacks finally comes to an end, and that soon, we'll see the old Shavkat Rakhmonov again, the fighter who brings chaos into the cage, fights relentlessly, and wins fans over with his fearless, wild style.